Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. Wednesday, word. And we are live. What is going on? First row. It's your command. It's your man, Coach Rowe. I'd like to welcome you to season 5 of the Wednesday Word. We're going to jump straight into it tonight because I don't have a whole lot of time, but I definitely want to share a whole lot of message. Tonight's topic on the Wednesday Word is going to be focus on joy. As always, I like to share what I mean by my topics. So what do I mean by the topic focus on joy? During my off season, while I was not doing Wednesday Words, I was thinking really much about like our environments and the area that I grew up in, the household that I grew up in, and all these different things, reflecting on the past. And one of the things I found is how easy it is for us to navigate to the negative experiences we had in the past, and sometimes how easy it is to navigate to the positive experiences that we had in the past. But in navigating to either experience, sometimes we miss those more subtle lessons in our reflection. So what focusing on joy is really about when we're reflecting, whether we're reflecting on a success or a failure, reflecting, what's going on, Brother Bruce? Reflecting on the moments in that season that cause joy. So you might have a failure, but at the end of the day, there can be some joys that are a little more subtle that you can glean, but most of us simply remember the failure. That's what's ingrained in us. So tonight, I have 3 tools for the first row that I want to share with you when it comes to focusing on joy. Let's jump straight into it. Tool number 1 when it comes to focusing on joy is you didn't get life all of anything. And so this is a little cryptic in the way that I stated it, and I said it a different way when I was originally writing, but it felt like this is what it is. You didn't get life all right, and you didn't get life all wrong. That's what I mean by this tool. Really, there's a balance of things that you got right and a balance of things, well, sometimes an imbalance of things you got right and sometimes an imbalance of things that you got wrong. But at the end of the day, you didn't get it all one or the other. I look at it like, even if I was taking like an SAT, right? I go and I take this SAT exam and I can fail that test, right? I can like not pass, not get a good score on my SAT and not have colleges interested in me attending their college. Hey, what's going on, Shamar? Good to see you. However, just because I didn't pass, allegedly, my SAT doesn't mean that I got every answer in my SAT wrong. There's going to be probably some answers that I got right, some answers that I got right very quickly. However, even if I passed the SAT, it doesn't mean I aced the SAT and every single answer I got right, and that's why I passed. Even if I did get every answer right in the SAT, that doesn't mean that the next test that I take, I'm going to get every answer right. So eventually I'm going to get an answer wrong. And really, when I say you didn't get life all of anything, that's what I'm saying. When we are looking at reflection, when we're looking to reflect and go back in time in our time machine, if you've read my book, you'll know what I mean when I say the time machine. If we're going to go back in time in our time machine and look at things, it's important to look at them from a different perspective from when we were looking at them initially the first time. Number 1, we should be a lot more wiser. We should have more experience. We should have hopefully a better critical thinking capacity. There should be a lot more things that are improved when we are looking back from a future state at a previous state. And because of that, when we're looking back in that, it's important to not get caught up on the majors and to kind of begin to focus on some of those minor things. Again, the more subtle things that take place. I look at it like this. I did the thought of the day today, and it was centered around joy. Really, it was centered around like whether you win or lose, that there's life lessons to be gleaned in both cases, and it's not always the big overarching theme. I look at it like in that thought of the day when I was thinking that this morning, it was probably because the Wednesday Word was on my mind. But in the thought of the day when I was thinking that this morning, it was like, man, you know what? I can look back at some great times in my life and be like, dude, that was like some of the best times in my life. But I don't just focus on the good in that. And it doesn't mean I focus on the bad in that. It means, what else did I learn about myself at that time? When things were good, when I was happy, when I wasn't depressed, when I was depressed, what other things were taking place, what other things created joy. And this is the reason why this is like the first tool, and it's so important, is because it is inevitable that you're going to go through something that is going to impact your mental health. Man, woman, boy, girl, doesn't matter. Something is going to impact your mental health. And when it does, it is going to be very or extremely helpful for you if you've looked back at times when you've been depressed and been able to find out how you found joy in those moments. If you're just focused on the negative, well, I was depressed and I never want to be depressed again, so I'm never going to date again, or I'm never going to let somebody hurt me again, or I'm never going to put myself in a position for whatever it may be again. If you're just looking at like, hey, Lori, sorry, hi, Lori. If you're just looking at that, then what's going to happen is when you go into depression again, or you have something that impacts your mental health, you're not going to know really the steps that got you out of that. You're just going to know what it felt like to be depressed. In the same regard, when you look at the past and you see something positive, and it's like, oh man, I know what it felt like to be excited. I bought my first home and I was super excited about it. And you know what that feels like. Then when you find yourself in a space in the present where it's like, hey, I'm feeling really good about myself, you can't notice the small things that maybe took place that led to the decline of your happiness. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. If you find yourself in a depressed state again, you might not realize when looking back at what you were happy about, oh man, I miss when we used to do this, or I missed when I got that house. It was such a great feeling. You won't realize that there were some things that were taking place that may have detracted from your happiness. And vice versa, there's some things that you did that maintain that state of happiness. So when I say you didn't get all life anything, I mean that. You didn't get life all anything. You didn't get it all right. You didn't get it all wrong. You are living your experience in real time. And so what that is to say is to have a little grace with yourself when it comes to the choices that you make and when you're reflecting on the past. That's tool number one. Tool number two, when it comes to focus on joy, is learn what you want to duplicate. Learn what you want to duplicate. And it's kind of connected to tool number one because there's some subtleties that occur in the things that we want to duplicate that we sometimes don't pay attention to. A good example of this is your credit. There's some subtleties that you can pick up on that's like, ooh, I'm doing these habits again, and this is going to eventually lead to a space where I get overwhelmed and I can't catch up, and then bills start being paid late, and now my credit score goes back down, and now I can't qualify for anything. And the opposite of that is I'm doing all those things that I'm supposed to be doing, and my credit score goes up over time, right? But learn how to duplicate what you want. Here's the key to this, though. The key is that whatever we focus on, if we focus on joy, if we focus on laughter, if we focus on happiness, these are the things that we will naturally gravitate to. If we focus on anguish, if we focus on frustration, if we focus on anxiety, if we focus on being grumpy and moody, which my wife tells me that I am sometimes, if we focus on those things, those are the things that we will naturally gravitate to. So part of the duplication process has 100% to do with focus. I say part of it, but it's 100% to do with focus. I feel like I think the movie was Napoleon Dynamite or something like that. Guaranteed to work 100% of the time, 60% of the time. But part of that, again, that process of duplication requires that we have a focus on things. And whatever we focus on, the reason I say focus is because whatever we focus on is eventually what we gravitate to. Think about it like this. If I'm, in a space where I feel like every relationship that I'm in has the same theme. You ever heard a person say, I always seem to attract the people that add whatever you want to add to that. Every relationship that I'm in has the same thing. Well, there's something that I'm doing that's duplicating that process. And probably I've been in this, and I'll share this. Well, I won't share this in the story tonight, but I've been in a situation where I have been in a relationship and it's like, okay, I was in this relationship. There were certain aspects or characteristics that I did not like about the person that I was in the relationship with, got out of that relationship. And instead of saying, okay, what kind of joy could I focus on? What were the things that I liked about that person? What were some of the things that I think I might like about the next person? I just was like, just give me the opposite of what I had. And in doing that, I got the opposite of what I had because that's where my focus was on. I was like, this person had this characteristic. I don't like that characteristic. Give me the opposite. And I got the opposite. Unfortunately, when I got the opposite, I didn't think about all the other characteristics that mattered because it was only based on what I was focused on. And so today I'm still dealing with the opposite characteristic that I was focused on. Now, when I looked for my wife, it was like, hey, look, I don't just need the opposite of what I had and what I didn't like. I want to focus on somebody who is fun to be around, somebody I can joke with, somebody I can laugh with, somebody I can build with, somebody I can talk to intellectually. Like there was all of a sudden a whole new gambit of things that I was interested in because I was able to look back and reflect and say, these were the things that led to the downfall and the demise of my previous relationship. This is what I mean when I say, learn what you want to duplicate. Again, if you are finding yourself in circles where maybe the people that you're involved with or around are not as inspirational as you want them to be, learn from that because you're duplicating it. So learn from yourself what it is that you're bringing that you're duplicating. And joy is the critical component. I say focus on joy, focus and joy. Joy is the critical component because when we have joy, we feel fulfilled, we feel energetic, we feel alive. And it's like ice cream. If you can eat ice cream and you're not lactose intolerant, it's like ice cream. The more you eat, the more you want to eat. It just tastes better the more you eat of it. And so that's what tool number 2 is about, is really learning what you want to duplicate, learning how to put your focus and intention in the right areas, but not just, like I said, the milestones while you're reflecting. Oh, this was a win. It felt great when I made the game-winning shot. Well, you may not be able to duplicate that every time, and you don't want to be a ball hog trying to shoot the last second shot every single time. But what other things felt great about that winning experience? Those are the things that you want to follow up with because those are the small, minute details that lead to duplicatable habits. That's moving on. Tool number 3, when it comes to focus on joy, is stay centered on joy. And this is more so for the reflection part of focusing on joy. The reason I say stay centered on joy is because for a lot of us, including myself, it's so easy to get sidetracked or caught up on the negative. It's so easy. In fact, my wife and I were having a conversation the other day, and we were talking about buying houses and how many years it had been that I went in my life as an adult and I wasn't able to buy a house. And I thought like, wow, it took me a long time to get to this point where I was able to buy like a house. And the reality was it was like, but there were reasons why I chose not to buy a house. And I started talking to her about it. And as I started talking to her about why the reasons I didn't buy houses like 4 times when I was younger, which were all good reasons, it was like, wow, I want to take those lessons, the lessons and the logic that I had, not, oh, well, I didn't buy a house. I didn't want to take that. I would like to buy houses. But I wanted to take the lesson and the logic behind the reasoning why I chose not to buy houses, because that kept me out of financial turmoil when a lot of people were in financial turmoil. When a lot of people were saying, I make $10,000 a month, give me this variable interest rate and I'll just refinance again and refinance again and refinance again. When a lot of people were doing that, I said, yo, I don't feel comfortable with that. And I chose not to do that. And then when a lot of people foreclosed and short sold their homes and filed bankruptcy, I didn't have to interact with that. And so though, if I'm looking back, it's like, man, you didn't buy a house in your 20s when you probably could have or should have or wanted to. The reality is there's a lot of lessons that I picked up. And by focusing on joy, the experiences that I did not have because of my willingness to abstain from purchasing a home, by focusing on that, I'm able to take those lessons into responsible home ownership in the future, and in the present and in the future. Really, the overall about this, when it comes to being centered on joy, is it's easy to veer. And I liken it to when we're driving on the freeway, right? Especially when you're a new driver or you're driving in a vehicle that you've never driven in before. It's easy to veer. It's kind of easy to kind of like get out of your lane a little bit. And normally you'll hit the little bumps in the road and hey, you're veering, you need to get back in your lane, right? But let's say there's no bumps on the road and you veer a little bit into the lane, but you see that you're veering, so you catch yourself and you put yourself back in your lane. That's a much easier correction when it comes to staying centered in your lane versus you veering all the way to the dirt gravel shoulder and then trying to hurry up and get back to the lane that you were in. That's a lot harder and much more dangerous if you don't blow out your tires when you're on the dirt shoulder. Joy is the same way when it comes to our reflection. When we are reflecting, whether positive or negative, on things in the past, it is so easy to get caught up in veering and not paying attention to the fact that you're veering. It's almost like dozing off and you just kind of drift, right? When you're going to reflect, my recommendation, because I'm still never going to tell people what they have to do, is that you take the time to be intentional about what it is that you're seeking when you reflect. Are you seeking to beat yourself up? You don't have to reflect to the past to do that. You can do that in the present. I'm sure there is a decision that we have made within this week that we could probably beat ourselves up about. So if you're going to the past that far back to beat yourself up over something, that seems like a lot of extra work for not a lot of return on investment. But if you're truly going back to see what you can learn, if you're truly going back to see how you can maintain or reacquire joy, then you're going to have to stay centered on the mission. Because again, it's even when we're focused on joy, it's easy to veer off track from that. So make sure that you keep yourself centered, push yourself back to the middle. And when you feel like, hey, I can't keep myself centered enough, it's almost like if you're dozing off when you're driving, pull over and take a break. Stop reflecting for a bit, take a break, come back to it a little bit later. At the end of the day, over time, not over a day, not over one session, but over time, the more you practice staying focused and centered on joy, the easier it will become to stay centered on joy when you're reflecting on whether it's positive or negative things. So that's what I have for you guys this evening. Really quick to go over the 3 tools for the first row. Tool number 1, when it comes to focus on joy, is you didn't get life all anything. Remember, you will get experiences right and wrong simultaneously, but you're never getting it all one or the other. Tool number 2 is learn what you want to duplicate. Again, at the end of the day, we are looking at the past to see what we can duplicate in the present. Those answers can be found in both successes and failures. And at the end of the day, it's not the major success or the major failure. There's room in between to glean and learn. And then tool number 3, finally, is, oops, missed that button, sorry. Stay centered on joy. And so again, our minds naturally roam to areas we have practiced visiting. So practice visiting joy more frequently, and your mind will naturally begin to veer towards joy and keep you centered in that lane. As always with the Wednesday Word, I like to share a story, just something brief that got me thinking about this particular topic. And really what got me thinking about focusing on joy is where I'm at in my career professionally right now, where I'm at in my career education right now. And I started thinking about some of the bad choices that I've made in regards to education in the past. I mean, even going back to like high school and things like that. But in those bad choices, I was able to see where I was continually able to learn. So let's say U.S. history in 11th grade. Shout out to Mr. James. I didn't like that class. And though I didn't like that class, eventually I just stopped going to the class, right? I was like, I'm not going to this class anymore. I'm over it. But I never stopped learning, and I never stopped pushing myself to learn. And so instead of focusing on the fact that I failed U.S. history and had to take it in summer school, what I focused on was, hey, even when you failed at something, you still were willing to continue to push yourself to learn and glean new things. I look at where I am in my career now. I look at my ability to pick up new things in my career now, and to learn new technologies on the fly. Where a lot of people may struggle with that, I don't struggle with that. And I truly believe it's because I've tapped into my ability to read information, absorb the information, apply information. I truly believe that's what it's from, but that comes from all these different experiences, some positive wins, some failures, where I have continued to push myself to learn new things. And so accepting that, though I did fail U.S. history, right? I didn't get all of my high school career wrong. I inevitably passed high school, right? And I learned how to duplicate what led to my success, what's leading and continues to lead to my success in corporate America. And part of that, for me, requires that I stay focused and centered on joy, whether I'm reflecting in the past or I'm focused on the present. I stay centered on joy, because at the end of the day, I know for me, I have learned, if I'm unhappy with what I do and where I'm at or where I do it, yeah, it's not going to be a long stay for me. I'm going to quit. I'm going to leave. And that's what I've learned about myself over the years that I've worked in corporate America. And it doesn't mean, like my last company I left, I love that company, but it doesn't mean that I inevitably left that company, because for me, I could see that I don't like being in a stagnant place. And because I felt stagnant, eventually that would impede and impact on my joy. And then you're going to see poor performance, poor work ethic, and all those different things. And that's not who I want to be. And that's not who I am. So I'd made the choice to leave and improve my situation. So that's what tonight's story is about. Focus on joy. When you're reflecting, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. Stay in your centered lane. Try not to veer, and make sure you glean those subtle lessons, because those are the keys to the best habits that will propel you in your life the furthest. I appreciate you guys rocking with me live. As always, if you like this video, share it. If you share this video, like it. I can't wait until the next time that I engage with you. But until then, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.